What's up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to another lesson on the right mindset. Today, we are going to go over how to write good dialogue compared to bad dialogue. So, whether you're a beginner or a seasoned writer, mastering dialogue is an ever-evolving journey that can elevate your work to new heights. So, today, we're going to delve into the objective criteria that distinguishes good dialogue from bad and empower you to craft compelling conversations that captivate your audience. Um, Ultimately, there is I like this dialogue and I don't like this dialogue, which is opinion, and then there's objective truth, which is the dialogue following the rules and establishing itself as needed. So that's basically what today is going to be. Let's get to it. Let's hit that intro, shall we? Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Gotta get that poison in me. Gotta get those chemicals. Pepsi sponsor. So yeah, today is going to be about about how to write good dialogue, etc., etc. Real quick, if you're a beginner or if this is your first time or you've been here before, but you haven't done so already, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. We do stuff about craft as well as analyzing story within videos too. We talk about stories, movies, etc., and we do interviews with fellow writers. Let's get right to it. Identifying objective criteria. Bad dialogue. We have fun here. Don't take yourself seriously in life. Okay? Be serious about not taking yourself seriously while still maintaining your boundaries and the things that make you enjoy your life. Of course, be serious about your career, but if you go in too hard, too crazy, you're not going to have fun. Anyway, in this section, we'll explore the key elements that define objectively good or bad dialogue. Well, opinions on dialogue can vary. There are essential aspects that contribute to its effectiveness. So, uh, let's talk about a couple of things. Uh, our goal is to delve into the objective criteria that differentiates the good dialogue versus the bad. So, while dialogue preferences can be subjective, certain elements contribute to its effectiveness and resonate with readers or audiences. So, let's see. I'm gonna tell you 6, and then I'm gonna kind of go over it. So, authenticity is 1. Character consistency is 2. Relevance to the plot is 3. Natural flow is 4. Subtext is 5. Conflict and tension is 6. Now, I will also like to state that all lines in a novel, every single line, must do one or more of these 3 elements: plot, character development, or world building. That is a must. When it comes to dialogue, is the dialogue helping with plot? Is it helping develop the character, or is it establishing world building? If it comes to the narrative, the narrator, Thomas sat there at the microphone talking. Each line must elevate plot, character development, or world building. Doesn't have to be all 3. It can be, but it has to be at minimum 1 of those 3 things, 2 or 3 of those things. Every single line. And then every line must lead into itself. So when it comes to dialogue, those are the flat out first things you should be looking. Is this dialogue establishing plot, or is it establishing character, or is it establishing world building? Now keep in mind, what a character says or doesn't say, and when and where they say or don't say things, does establish character. Keep that in mind. So if you have 3 characters in a room, and only two of them talking, and the third one isn't, you're technically building character development for the silent character. So if that's your intention, then great. But why are they silent? Okay. But anyway, so the 6 things: authenticity, character consistency, relevance to the plot, natural flow, subtext, and conflict and tension. So let's go over that a little bit. So what is authenticity? Well, good dialogue feels genuine and true to the character speaking it. They aren't just speaking to speak. It should reflect their unique personalities, backgrounds, and motivations. Each character should have a distinct voice and manner of speaking that aligns with their traits and experiences. Authentic dialogue creates a strong emotional connection between characters and readers, immersing them in the story. Now, character consistency in dialogue is essential for maintaining believable and or I should say, maintaining believability in your characters and avoiding jarring inconsistencies. Characters should remain true to their established traits and development throughout the story. Deviation from their established personalities or beliefs without adequate explanation can undermine the reader's trust in the narrative. So let's, real quick, the authenticity, okay? Let's go fantasy. If you have an elf and you've already established in your world building in your world that elves are refined and rarely show emotion, if an elf character shows emotion, there needs to be truth to why that character, that elf, broke down its culture or cultural behavior and became aggressive or yelled or seemed rude. Okay? Because the background of that character has already been established that elves are refined and they refuse to allow their emotions to dictate their actions, right? Sort of like, and again, I'm not saying every single British person in the world. I mean, I'm just generalizing just for argument's sake. The British personality, is like you don't show aggravation and stuff like that to other people. Like you're rude subtextually in there. It's like because it's all about presentation, right? Which, okay, again, just as an example. But so keep authenticity of your characters. Who are they? What's their personalities, their backgrounds, their positions? That's probably the most important thing, is if you can identify what their positions are on all sorts of different things that come up within a conversation or a scene. Are their positions being challenged? If so, how are they? What are the consequences to their reaction? And does their consequence or their results influence their original position to either slightly change, completely change, or not change at all? And that's how you maintain authenticity. Character consistency, however, is making sure that you do know their positions, okay, and their particular traits or the things that are important to them are established. As an example, if the character is not truly a sports fan because they like the Jets, okay, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But let's say you have a character that is like a huge Jets fan, and then like the midpoint conflict, it turns out they never liked the Jets. They don't even like football. Jets, character consistency is not there. Okay, relevance to the plot. See, dialogue should serve a purpose in advancing the plot or character development minimum. And of course, world building is important. But every conversation should contribute to the story's progression, revealing crucial information, driving conflict, or deepening relationships. So that doesn't mean every line of dialogue needs to move the plot, but every line of dialogue needs to either move the plot or create character development or establish world building. If dialogue isn't doing one or more of those elements, you might want to refine the dialogue, okay? Because you want conversation to move characters through their arc. You want conversation to move plot. You want conversation to move readers through the world. Because super irrelevant dialogue can slow down narrative. Just complete, like it really can ruin it. There's a big difference between somebody talking about their feelings or expressing their disdain or, you know, worried or confused about where they're heading, or, you know, aliens just showed up, versus dialogue that's sort of like, it's really nice out today. I love, yeah, it makes me think of the color green. Green is so beautiful. Anyway, I like green. Green is good. You like green? I like green. But none of that is doing anything. Yeah, it might be character development in your mind, but it's not doing anything. Especially if green or their love for green does not influence the world or their world or the story in general. It's not important. Natural flow. Dialogue should flow smoothly and sound naturally when speaking aloud. Avoid overly formal or stilt language unless it serves a specific character or narrative purpose. Use contractions, interruptions, and pauses to create a conversational rhythm that mirrors real life. And of course, well-paced dialogue keeps readers engaged. Now, in my The Maven War saga, um, I have tribes people. It takes place in a different world. I call them tribes people because they live in the plains. There's people that live near the water. There's people that live in the mountains. There's people that, right? So there's people that solely live in the forests, and they're just considered tribes people. They are not Native Americans. It's just they are a tribe of people that live in these. Anyway, I made it so tribes people have a more refined dialect and are philosophical, and they learn and they encourage learning. They encourage thinking outside tradition. So there are traditions, like, for example, you got to be married by the time you're 16 if you're a yarber, which is basically like a prince of the chief, but there are no chief. You know, they're not called chiefs. And I'm just letting you so you understand what I'm saying. So the arbor, and but if you don't, you're not. It's not like there's a penalty for it. But to be quote unquote considered an adult, you usually have to be married. So even if you're 18, 19 years old and you're not married yet, they don't consider you an adult until you've created family. However, if you don't, they don't ban you from the tribe. They don't look down upon you. They're very progressive, and they have a liberal stance. With some of the elders having a more conservative stance, but again, they want to see evolution to their way of life. Whereas the city life is a little looser. Their concerns, and since the cities are usually confined by walls, depending on how powerful the city is, they're limited. They're held back. They focus on things like wealth and growth, because you could have a bigger house, a nicer house, money, 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 right? Coin, give me coin. And their dialogue is looser. So I purposefully did that. And in their dialogue, if it's the first time reading it, you're like, oh, their dialogue is very formal. And you would think royalty would be formal. But in reality, the royalty is maybe not as formal as the people of the plains. So, but there's a consistency to that, and you want to maintain that natural flow depending on their society, etc., etc. So number 5 is subtext, and effective dialogue often carries underlining meanings. Subtext allows characters to communicate their intentions, fears, or desires indirectly, adding depth. Skillful use of subtext enhances the richness. Not everything needs to be subtext, but sometimes you want to play around with the reader's ability to follow along. Maybe you want to let them think a little bit. Maybe you don't want to reveal something so quickly. So use subtext to kind of give insight to anyone who's paying attention or could see deeper, and then allow it to kind of be unfolded through the story. But subtext is also good. Sometimes you want characters to feel like they are friends, but the way somebody's speaking, if you're really paying attention, you might be like, oh, how do they? There's a little something in there. So that's important. Subtext kind of mixes it up. You don't always have to tell your feelings as a character. You don't have to be like, it's just I'm under a lot of stress. I got the trial next week to prove my worth as a warrior, etc., etc. But you could be a little, oh, what's wrong? You right? Oh, I'm fine. Just I'm focused. I'm just focused on getting my chores done today. And then the other character might say, I just heard about the trials are next week, and the character's like, yeah, trials are next week. They're so exciting, right? I'm super pumped for those trials. But you did great on your trials, and then Subtext is in the getting out of there, getting out of the like. Let me put it on you. Don't worry about me in the trials. So you could play around with it. Anyway, number 6, conflict and tension. This is my favorite. Dialogue thrives on conflict and tension as these elements propel the plot and reveal character. Why? Because conflict challenges positions. And if you challenge positions, you challenge character development. Because depending on the results of the consequences, it's either going to slightly change, completely change, or not change at all the character's perspective. So engaging conversation often involves characters with different goals, beliefs, or motivations, positions. So someone who believes the tree gods are the greater gods and the sea gods are the lesser gods, and then someone else's position is the opposite, now you could have some conflict. You know, you could be like, no, the tree gods, they're rooted and sturdy and stuck on the land. They can't move. They aren't malleable. They don't have growth. Their growth is always in one position, and the ocean moves completely and is ever growing, and it is the source of life. And then they're like, no, the trees, they are the source of oxygen. And you're like, it's H2O, two oxygens. That's why. You know, imagine they had the science. But my point is, now there's a conversation. Doesn't mean they have to hate each other. Doesn't mean there has to be a fight. It just means you could even slow it down. You could bring it more philosophical. What led you to believe in the gods of the ocean? Well, honestly, I was a god, a worshiper of the tree gods, um, but I found they didn't really get to the root of the problem. I always felt like I was barking up a tree. I wanted to branch out and leave the tree gods so I can sort of wave goodbye from over here and see what I can do, since most people watered down the belief of the water gods before I got there. But life's a beach. Anyway, no one's fighting, but there is conflict because there's a difference of opinion. Anyway, you wanna work and recognize those things. Hey, so let's get to it. Delete that. Crafting objectively good dialogue. Now that we have identified some of the things, let's explore the techniques for writing, and we'll discover the art of subtext, the power of conflict, etc., etc. So, crafting objectively good dialogue is an art that involves weaving together various elements. So, authenticity and character voice is through writing compelling dialogue is basically maintaining that personality and that background, right? So we kind of already gave a little look-see over that. So how do we what's a technique that can help us do this? Well, listen to other people in real life, pay attention to their words, their choices, speech patterns, and mannerisms. You know, maybe ask a friend if you could record them and you having a conversation about a topic. Pick a topic, pick one that you have a position on, they have a position on, and just discuss that, and then listen to the conversation. Infuse these unique traits into your characters' dialogue and dialogue to make them feel like real individuals. I gotta drink something. Sorry. And since number 2, since great dialogue usually has subtext and layered meanings, what you have to think about, what is the unspoken emotion, the hidden agenda, or underlining tension that is in that scene between these two characters, three characters, or a group of people based on their positions. So by implying more than what's explicitly said, subtext adds depth to the conversation as well as the characters. And mastering subtext allows you to convey complex emotions and themes without resorting to heavy-handed exposition, which we all know I'm not a fan of what I call narrative exposition. I like character exposition. I like learning about things through characters' experiences and what they're doing. in talking about, but not like they stop and they go, let me tell you about the tree gods. By the way, there are not tree gods or water gods in any of my novels like that. I'm just using that as an example. Anyway, 3, conflict and tension dialogue should thrive on conflict. Again, it doesn't have to be aggressive, but these clashes of interest create tension and drama, driving the plot forward and making the interaction dynamic. It also tells you a lot about the characters. And, you want to avoid unnecessary or overly expository dialogue that slows down the narrative. Instead, allow the plot to be relevant. Let plot be triggered by conversation, the world around them, or actions. Okay? 5, emotional resonance. Well, is your dialogue allowing people to laugh, cry, create suspense? How's the word exchange? What is the impact? Well, you could use vivid language, evocative imagery, and relatable situations to connect with your audience. Because strong dialogue also needs to have the action around it. What is the world around it? And sometimes that really helps the dialogue pop. So an action beat within the dialogue tags, specific dialogue tags, using dialogue tags incorrectly could mess up the emotional impact and also the natural flow and pacing, which is 6. Remember, you want to avoid overly formal and stilted language unless, of course, it aligns with specific or particular character personalities. The truth is, practice is key, and revising and refining your dialogue will ultimately lead to stronger and more impactful interactions between your characters. As you continue to develop your skills, you'll find that writing good dialogue becomes an intuitive process, breathing life into your characters and making things. So, really quick, you don't have to practice only when you write. And what that means is if you're having trouble with dialogue, just practice dialogue. It doesn't have to be in your story. It doesn't have to be about your story. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. You could just take a day or a week or a month and say, this month for an hour a day, I'm going to just practice dialogue. I'm going to create positions in the characters, and I'm going to have them have a conversation back and forth. Maybe 2 characters to start. When you start getting more comfortable, add a 3rd character with the 3rd position, etc., etc. Maybe some of the positions align, some of them don't. Anyway. Refining. So, refining your dialogue to good. Writing objectively good dialogue doesn't always come effortlessly, but through revisions and refinement, you can enhance your work. I'm telling you. Learn how to review your dialogue with a discerning eye, making necessary adjustments to improve authenticity, pacing, and coherence. Keep in mind, just because you wrote it doesn't mean it's great. Take away the bias and allow yourself a chance to kind of work it. It's okay to work it. Working something doesn't mean you're a bad writer. Not working something means you're a bad writer. Great writers work. They work on their craft. They work on the scenes. I mean, there is such thing as overworking, just as there is underworking. Find a happy medium where the scene or dialogue or chapter is where you want it to be. And then, obviously, if beta readers or alpha readers are telling you what it is and it aligns with what your purpose was, then it's ready to go. And then, again, that comes from, how do you know if writing is good? Well, you have to have the beta and alpha readers. So, how do you review with a discerning eye? Well, during the editing process, approach your dialogue with a critical and discerning eye. Look for areas where the conversation feels forced, unnatural, or disconnected from the character's personality by following the 6 rules above, which is, the conflict, the subtext, the authenticity, character, etc. And you want to make sure that each line serves a purpose in advancing the plot, revealing character, or providing essential information about the world. I always tell some of my clients, I go, look, sometimes, if I'm not around or someone's not around to give you any advice, you look at one line and then you look at the rules. If that one line doesn't follow any of the rules, then you have to say, well, how did I break the rules and does it work with the breaking of the rules? If the answer is no, work that line. There's another rule. It's not really about dialogue right now, but you should use it with dialogue, but every line should lead into the next line. It should not be segmented statements. It should not be like, the sky is beautiful with clouds. They rode along the plains. Um, Everyone was wary of the situation. Each one of those lines should actually be a paragraph as a line. And you already know that that needs work. So the first one, the sky was full and beautiful. Well, first of all, it's not from a perspective, it's just descriptive. So how do we allow it to have some value? Put the character through it. Raven rode beside her fellow Raven rode beside her weary followers. The sky was open with opportunity and possibility. Right now you're getting a little artsy. Okay, but now you let it kind of have purpose. It's not just descriptive. It's through and then Raven found herself, or you could even say, aside her weary riders, Raven looked to the sky, the open sky, and with a hopeful delight. Darren, Dave, no, Daryl, whatever. Daryl, Daryl rode steady with his sword to his side, always ready for a battle. Whatever. Like, those are bad examples. I'm so tired right now. All right. Anyway, what I'm saying is each line should move into itself. So, Raven looked out towards the enigmatic mountain range. Its jaggedness grew from the ground to the high skies above, covered with clouds. She saw the birds move and radiate across the orange sky. She knew she was in the right direction, as those were the birds of Riverhide. All those lines move into each other, and it's also doing something. It's world building. It's because we're describing the mountains and what the terrain looks like. Where Riverhide is a place. It's through her perspective. It also tells us a little bit about the character, because the character, why is she looking at the mountain range, the sky, and the birds? Oh, and she's familiar with that. She knows she's in Riverhide. We just learned a lot about the character. Even though it's subtle, it's character. Anyway, number 2, improving authenticity. Well, one of the how to refine your dialogue to good is you got to avoid excessive use of filler words or overly complex language that might distract readers. Sometimes it's okay to also say that the language patterns align with the character, so it's all right to have one character be like, "Oh dear, but the sky, pulls us together, and yet on this beautiful day, why should we hold ourselves back from moving forward into the tavern? I would rather us walk the streets and take in the city." That character's fine as long as every character is not like that. If the responding character's like, "Listen, Brad." "Listen, Daryl, I told you the only reason we're coming here is because we got to get to the tavern. I'm hungry. I need some mead." "Fine, if you want to take away the joy of being a little bit more passive in life so you can breathe and embrace culture, whatever. Mead it shall be." Right? And then another character's like, "Do we have to keep him around?" Yeah, we do. He's actually our guide." Anyway. Pacing and coherence. Now, dialogue should flow smoothly, just as narrative should flow fluidly, just as I gave that example before about the mountain range, okay? But remember the rhythm in the conversation, right? Aim for natural back and forth that keeps, so you want that back and forth ebb and flow. If, again, the example I even gave about the thing, he's talking about, why do we have to go into the tavern? Let's walk around and have some fun. The guy's like, "Oh, we gotta go. This is the only reason we're here, and I'm hungry and I need mead." He's like, "Fine, if that's what you want, then forget the day." And then someone else is like, "Do we have to take him?" All that is they're speaking and responding to each other. You want to make sure that whatever's said sort of like is answered or avoided, but avoided in a way that sticks to the character. All right. If characters have quips, if characters have moments that they're sort of like uh, observing the situation, if somebody was sitting in that moment and go, oh, well, actually, the character going, do we have to take him with us? Like, what's the deal? And then the other character's like, yeah, they're the guide. They're observing the situation and making comment on it. So it still fits the movement of a dialogue between people. And the other thing about pacing and coherency is sentence length. So if that one person is like, no, flowery, 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 I'm a bod. And then the other person is like, listen, I told you that everything we have to do is coming down to us getting in this tavern. If we don't stop now, we basically, no, you want to shrink it down. So it's flowery, 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 bod speak. And then the other person goes, as much as I would like to, I need to get in that tavern because I'm hungry and thirsty. I need my mead. Or I'm hungry and thirsty. And then the character goes, yeah, I haven't drinking mead in 6 days. I need my mead. Okay? Work with the rhythm. Have beta readers read your dialogue out loud to you. Or just read it and then give you some feedback, But be open to constructive criticism. Be willing to make necessary changes. All right. 3 more elements of refining your dialogue. So how do we look at consistency? Well, you should know your positions in your character, who they are, what they believe in, and if they are challenged, make sure they stand up to that challenge. Now, keep in mind, if you've established a position, for example, the tree gods are the greatest god, and anyone that says anything other is a fool. If that is the position, and you've established that over the course of your book, that's how they feel, not that they said those things exactly, but their behavior and their words have escalated to the point where the reader knows they are tree god. They are pro tree god. And a character says, I'm so glad we're in this region because they do not worship the tree gods, and the tree god worshippers are crazy. And that character chooses not to say something. There needs to be a strong defining why they don't say something. Because based on what you've already created with that character, they would go, and what's wrong with the tree god worshippers? But if you establish they hate that person, or maybe you establish that they love that person, then maybe they don't say anything. Maybe maybe they're like, you know what I'm talking about, and they say that to the tree god lover, and they're like, everybody has their own opinions. I personally don't like talking religion, in open ears. Interesting. What just happened? They slightly changed their position of being pro tree god. Even though they're probably pro tree god inside, they slightly changed their position because of their relationship with somebody they love. And they altered that. And that also could create conflict and tension because you, the reader, know, oh, there's going to be a fight. Oh, there's no fight. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, they change it. Okay. Obviously, you want to cut unnecessary exposition. If a character is saying, all right, listen, this is what we need to do. All right. The sword is in that cave and there is a dragon. We have to get through that dragon. There's 4 of us. You're this, or you're that, and you're this. What are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to do this. Right? That dialogue's not interesting. It's needed as exposition, but how do you turn it into something that resonates with the reader and has emotional truth and does plot, character, and or world building through that? Maybe if you have a chunk of exposition, what I do is I break it up. I'll say the first line, maybe with the alteration to it, all right, we need to get that sword, and then have someone push against it. There has to be another way because this is ridiculous. I'm not going in there. There's a dragon, right? And it's like, your fear of dragons is going to keep us from this. There's 4 of us. We each could do something. Maybe you just don't get close to the dragon. Wait, why does he have to not get close? I don't want to get close to dragons. I'm not afraid of dragons, but dragons eat people. So all that that big chunk of exposition is now being moved around the characters. You're having positions being challenged, people are talking. It's more interesting to cut up a chunk of exposition into a discussion and challenge the lines, And of course, the emotional resonance. If there is nothing there in the dialogue, you might want to rework it. And again, conflict doesn't mean anger. Conflict just means a disagreement, and it could be a loving disagreement. Where do you want to go to, honey? I don't know. You think of it. Already there's conflict. There's tension. All right. Well, what if we go to restaurant A? We just went to restaurant A. It's conflict. All right. Well, what about, we have restaurant B, C, and D, or we could go to the bowling alley, get food there, and bowl. Oh, that sounds like a fun date night. Let's do that. It was resolved, but there was a slight moment of tension and conflict. Okay. You could add vulnerability to it. Okay. The vulnerability. Where do you want to go? I don't know. You think of it. All right. How about restaurant A? I don't know. We just went there last week. Right. That's a slight bit of vulnerability, but you could add to it, right? Now the other character's like, the thing is, I think I kind of want to go back there because there's a meal. Remember when we went with my father? It was his last meal. I kind of want to. I don't know. I feel like having that meal. All right, you know what? Let's go. I'm in. We could go to restaurant A. Okay. Anyway, overall, you want to be patient and just look at the line, look at the rules. Look at the line, look at the rules. Does it break the rule? No, it's good. Breaks the rule? Work it. I do want to say, though, by applying these lessons learned in this video and taking the time to carefully review and adjust your dialogue, you'll be well on your way to creating compelling and impactful conversations that enrich your storytelling and captivate your audience. But also keep in mind that writing is both an art and a craft, and honing your dialogue writing skills will continue to develop with time and practice. The art of writing comes from you and your choice of words, the way you move it, the characters you develop, how you create chapters, soft and hard chapter breaks, your paragraphs, your prose, things like that, right? However, the craft of writing, everybody should pretty much be on the same page, no pun intended. But your voice, the art of it, is how you break the rules of the craft. So if you need to practice the craft to allow your art to manipulate that craft. So it's okay if sometimes you're practicing craft that diverges from your artistic choice if you're practicing. Because the more you practice, the more you can use. Like when I started as an illustrator, and when I started learning technique to draw people, because I liked drawing comic books and like dark illustrations and stuff like that, dark novels and stuff. Just because I was learning the technique to draw and the idea of perspective and the idea of proportions, like the head and how many heads a body is made up of, how many torsos the body is made up. The forearm is actually the foot length of a person, right? So these little things, looking at the doll and like having perspective, right? Because this is more interesting than this. See? More interesting than this. And you could even get crazier. Look at that. I made another layer, right? Todd McFarlane talks about that, and he's a genius when it comes to drawing, right? So the same thing with writing. Just because you're learning the fundamental of that craft doesn't mean it's going to take away from the way you see your art. Because my technique only helps me have more control over my art. Just like my understanding of technique for writing has made me have more control over my art of writing. Which brings us to the final thoughts. Dialogue is a powerful storytelling tool that can connect with audiences on a profound level, I promise you. But remember, what one person likes or dislikes about dialogue can be subjective. But understanding the objective criteria for good dialogue allows you to create conversation that resonates universally. Liking and disliking does not make something good or bad. It means you like it or dislike it. But you can like something that is bad, and you could dislike something that is good. Because the objective criteria that makes it objectively good doesn't mean we have to like it. There are plenty of books, movies, and television shows that I know deep down in my heart are objectively bad because they have no control over the criteria for writing. The rules of writing are thrown out. They are bad writing examples. But I love it. Transformers. Transformer robots from outer space. I'm in. I don't the dialogue is terrible. There's no real emotional except for like little beats that they kind of like make out of nothing. The logic of the movie isn't there because even in fantasy and sci-fi, there's a logic to the world. And if the logic of the world contradicts the logic if the logic of the fantasy world contradicts itself, then you ruin it. But if you're watching Transformer robots and you just like Transformer robots fighting one another, who cares? Enjoy the hell out of that. Does not mean me loving that movie does not make that movie good fundamentally. Just means that I love what I'm watching or reading. So keep that in mind. Okay? Just because you might be writing something that you love and the skill level or the rules and tools aren't there because A, you might not know them, B, you might not have them refined, or C, you only know some. That's really the reality of it. It just means learn, practice, develop your craft, and then do whatever you want with it once you kind of understand it. Because your art will never become the craft, because your art is the way you see the world, the way things siphon through you. Which brings us to the next video. The next video in the series will focus on 3 wells of dialogue. The next video in the series will focus on the 3 wells of dialogue in the sense of discover your deep source of inspiration. Delve into the profound sources of inspiration that can fuel your dialogue writing, and exploring the wells of personal experience, empathy, and imagination. Learn how tapping into these wells can breathe authenticity and depth into your character's conversation, making them truly unforgettable. Question: what challenges do you face when writing dialogue, and how do you overcome it? Let me know in the comments below. We'd love to hear about it. And if you haven't already, but you've been watching, or you're new here, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. Because hey, it helps the channel, lets me do what I do. And as always, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.